As I said, my name is Kelly Magnus. I'm a consultant to the Caribbean Culture Fund, and I'll be taking you through this morning's orientation. We have a very short agenda this morning. The point of today is really to give you an overview of what this grant is about and to allow you the opportunity to ask questions. So we will have a brief welcome from the chair of our steering committee, Michelle Pierre-Louis, Dr. Ayoka Wiles from the Open Society Foundations, who is our lead donor, will then share some tips for how to make your proposal strong. And then I'm going to show you what we're asking for in the application form and share with you how we're going to evaluate those applications. Then we'll turn it over to you for any questions you may have. And Alan B. Augustine, who is also a member of our steering committee, will just give brief closing remarks. The session today is going to be recorded. We will send these slides and the recording to everyone who has registered for this morning's session. So you will have, you don't need to worry about taking notes. You'll get all the information. And you will also be able to ask any follow-up questions that you have by sending us an email to info@caribbeanculturefund.org. For today's session, we're going to ask you to put your questions in the chat so that we can make sure we're answering everyone's questions. We'll also send you the written responses to those questions when we mail out the materials from today. So thank you very much for joining us, and I will now turn it over to Michelle Pierre-Louis, Chair of the CCF Steering Committee.
Thank you, Kelly. Good morning, everyone. I'm extremely pleased to have this meeting this morning because the creation of the Caribbean Culture Fund has been a long process. We started some 3.5 years ago, and we wanted to make sure that this new initiative takes into account all the many issues related to the Caribbean culture, to the Caribbean artistic field, to the Caribbean artistic institutions. And for about a year, we had a feasibility study that was led by a very important scholar from Belgium who lives in Jamaica and who has written books on Caribbean, mostly visual arts. Verly Pupai, and Verly has done an excellent job in the feasibility study that we launched 3 years ago, as she organized 8 forums with stakeholders from all over the Caribbean and its diaspora in all fields to make sure that we gather all the necessary information that will lead us to launch the Caribbean Culture Fund. And one issue that came across the board was the issue of social and cultural justice. And that is why you probably saw in the text that we circulated for the call for a proposal that the Caribbean Culture Fund is a new initiative to support social and cultural justice in the artistic field, within the cultural institutions. And that's why the first call for proposal was about getting involved in civic engagement while insisting on the diversity of the creative fields. So it's a pleasure for me to launch this meeting, which is mostly based on information for the candidates, the eventual candidates to the Caribbean Culture Fund. I must add to that incorporation in the Caribbean is extremely difficult. That is why when the initiative started, it started with a lead institution in Haiti, which is called Le Centre d'Art. And Le Centre d'Art was created in 1944, so it's 80 years ago. and it resisted all the turbulence in Haiti, social, political, cultural, and is still promoting Haitian art and artists and artisans throughout the world. The Centre d'Art probably is the institution that launched the most prominent Haitian artists that are still in the world, creating exhibit everywhere. And we're very proud that the Centre d'Art was the institution that led to the creation of the Caribbean Culture Fund. And it's still today the fiscal sponsor for the Caribbean Culture Fund, pending the full legal incorporation of the fund. So I will stop there and will be eager and able, I hope, to answer all the questions with Kelly and Ayoka that I really want to say a few words about, because Ayoka has been instrumental in taking part in the creation of the Culture Fund and being the main funder so far of the CCF. So thank you for your attention. Thank you for being there this morning with us. And I hope all the information that will be provided by both Ayoka and Kelly. And I also want to thank Kelly for her involvement, just like Alan B., who is the actual executive director of Le Centre d'Art. Thank you all for being there. And we're ready to answer all the questions and the reasons why we chose those themes, and also the reason why we chose those countries. So thank you very much. It's a pleasure. Kelly? I'm turning off my camera because of issues with the internet.
Thank you very much, Michelle. I want to let the participants know that the interpretation is now available. You can choose Spanish or French by selecting it on the Translate the Interpretation tab at the bottom of your screen. And now I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Ayoka Wiles from the Open Society Foundations.
Thank you, Kelly. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here today. I want to also thank Michelle Pierre-Louis, who is the chair of the steering committee and board of the Caribbean Culture Fund. And I also want to thank the executive director of the Le Centre d'Art, Alan B. Augustine. This has been an amazing journey, and I'm so excited that we've gotten to this point. Open Society has been a lead donor and working in partnership with the Le Centre d'Art and the Caribbean Culture Fund to begin the launch of this fund, which is so important and critical for the region and for the Caribbean region. So, and I also want to thank Kelly Magnus, who has been supporting this work and championing this work. This first launch, this first initiative is a part of the Caribbean Culture Fund. I'm just going to talk very briefly about tips for a successful application. My work in the arts and culture field has spanned it over almost close to 3 decades as a grant maker and as a grant seeker. So I do understand both sides of the coin. And in respect to this fund, I think the idea here is that we wanted to, at least the fund wants to create a way in which artists, arts organizations in the Caribbean, they've selected us a few countries to start with. And I think Kelly will talk more about what's to come in the future. But as a part of this initial launch is to think about what are the projects, what are the work, what are the arts institutions, what are the artists that are thinking about how to make an impact in the Caribbean, which we know is enormous. And again, this fund is just touching upon some of those things that we hope that artists and cultural producers, sorry, something has come up on my screen. Okay. approach. So one of the things I want to point out, there's the three things I'm going to point out, which is need, project description, and budget. So we understand that the need in the Caribbean is enormous, right? We understand that the need that is happening in your individual communities in the Caribbean and your respective countries is enormous. But what we want you to describe, and I think what's important here in any proposal, in this proposal in particular, is why is this project necessary? Right? So answer that question. Why is this project? What is the moment that you understand is happening in your community and how you've identified it? Who do you intend to serve? And who do you intend to engage? Either those that you've already identified or those you intend to identify, that you've made a clear indication that you understand your community, that you intend to engage them in a way that's going to magnify or amplify a particular need. And we hope that you also provide examples to that need, and it can be very brief. I also encourage you to make a decision, right? As you describe your need, decide before you're writing and as you're thinking and calling over your proposal, is this project a model? Are you incubating something? Are you experimenting? I think that there's some room here for experimentation. And is the problem that you're seeking to solve acute? Meaning, is it critical? Is it severe? Is it drastic? What are the levels? We know that there's a spectrum of need and criticalness, but how have you identified that this particular issue that you're attempting to solve is important, isn't critical in this moment now? I think when you start there and you've addressed that you begin to move into what I would describe as a really solid project description. The project description, I think, one of the things that I've seen in reviewing applications for many years and writing is that the project description is almost one of the most important parts of this, besides the need, right? Is the most important part of this proposal. It's the nuts and bolts, right? So how will you implement this project? Okay, and so in the project description, here's the key that I always give to people, which we go back to, so elementary and secondary school, same thing. Who, what, where, why, and how. Remember that. Who, what, where, why, and how. Okay, what do you want to accomplish? The what. How. How will you accomplish this? How will you know you're successful, right? Who's going to carry out the project? Is there a project team? Is it an individual? Is it an institution? And who are the people that are going to be implementing this work? When will this project occur? I don't think you need to put out a deep timeline, but if you have something like that, I think that is helpful. But when will this occur? How many months? How many weeks? It's something that you're engaging with young people? Is it something that happens that scaffolds? Is it something that happens monthly? Is it something there's a planning stage and then there's an implementation and then it occurs? Describe when will the project occur. It could include, I don't know that you need to do, some proposals may need some details around when, how many weeks, how many hours. If it's not necessary for you to describe that as it relates to your project, do not go into too much detail around the sort of minutia of those when, but you should clearly describe there's a planning stage, there's an implementation stage, and this is a point in which this event or exhibition or program is going to occur. I think you need to really create a vivid picture for those who are viewing your application to see the breadth of this project proposal and project description. And then the last how I will say is, how do you know how you're doing? What will you put in place? How will you know whether it's going well or not? I don't think you need to go into, sort of writing this deep analytic evaluation process, but you should have a process in which you review internally, externally, how you're doing. How will you know things are going well? How will you know when you need to pivot or things are not going well? Is it internal conversations with your staff? Is it feedback from your community? Is it feedback from your board? Is it feedback from some external party? Is it the community, just having a circle and a conversation? I think that you should need to match what you're doing with how the developed dynamics or the proposed dynamic that you have within your community and with your staff. I don't think you need to create something that's more than you already have or that you intend to do, because these are limited funds. But I think it should, the intentionality of what you're describing should match your activities, if that makes sense. The last thing I want to talk about is the budget. And I think Kelly will go more into the specific budget request for this proposal. But I think one of the things I want you to take away is simple. Create a budget and make things simple. Simple for yourself and simple, and so that the persons that are going to be reviewing your application can clearly understand what you're attempting to communicate and articulate. Your budget should match your activities and your project description. So if your activities say, I'm going to plan an exhibition, I'm going to work with artists, I'm going to work with the community, and then I'm going to have a said exhibition, you should have in your budget expenses related to artist fees, space, rental, and whatever related activities that are related to this exhibition or whatever planned program activities. Make them clear, make them simple, few line items. Don't go into too much detail and give deep detail under everything. It can be personnel, staff, consultants, artists, fees, contractors, supplies, marketing, space rental, and clear totals. And then I'll say in the income section, and Kelly, again, you can go into this, but I think the idea is that we understand that resources in the Caribbean are scarce and that there's not as many opportunities, hence why the fund was created for a lot of funding. So in the income section, you can include anything that's pending from grants from any entity, when you expect to receive them, and think about also the ways in which they're non-traditional ways in which you've earned income, revenue, sales, entry fees, whatever they are, you can include them. I think the panel is going to be deeply understanding of the lay of the land of the Caribbean. And so I think you should not be afraid from saying, hey, our income is much less than what we are expending, and write a narrative about that. The last thing I'll say is describe in your proposal community engagement and interest. I think this is a way in which really the panel can really understand your deep connection to the Caribbean in the particular country, region, parish, whatever it is that you are intending to work. Demonstrate how you're connected to the community. Demonstrate how this interest for your work. Demonstrate how you've identified and you know so clearly about the audience that you're intending to serve, and create realistic goals around how you intend to engage them. So I'm going to stop there and I'll turn it back over to Kelly.
Thank you very much, Ayoka. I will now take you through a short presentation, just breaking down the steps in the proposal, some of which Ayoka has touched on, so bear with me if there be a little bit of repetition, but I think it will be useful for you to see where in the proposal the things that she's referenced need to be addressed. So just give me 1 second to get my screen up. Okay, so I'm gonna go back and do a bit of housekeeping first. I think everyone is now aware that the deadline for this grant proposal is April 30. We expect that there will be a rush in trying to load things onto the site. So if you can get your proposal in a bit early, I would recommend that. I have had some feedback that persons have had some challenges with uploading the attachments to the site. If you are having that challenge, you may also just email the application form and all the attachments directly to us at grants@caribbeanculturefund.org. If you're planning to use the online application, what I would recommend is that you write your application out first, and then you copy and paste it into the sections, as the saving may be a little bit glitchy on the website. So only enter the information into the form when you're ready to go. The editing might not work as smoothly, or you can feel free to just email the forms directly to us at grants@caribbeanculturefund.org. As Ayoka mentioned, we have had to put in some restrictions on eligibility for this round. This call is open to applicants from Barbados, Dominican Republic, Haiti, Jamaica, and Trinidad and Tobago. Our next call, which we expect to release sometime this summer, will be open to a much wider footprint of applicants. So we ask you to bear with us and just give us a chance to work out some of the behind the scenes challenges with registration that we've been having. There are no restrictions on who can apply. So the call is open to individual artists, collectives, and arts and culture organizations. And you may submit a project that is either new work or existing work. We're trying to keep this round as open and as flexible as possible. The call is open to art in all disciplines. The list that is here is not exhaustive, but it includes everything from architecture and design, festival arts, film, literary arts, performing and visual arts, as well as interdisciplinary projects. There are two themes in this first round. The first is art for social change and civic engagement, and 10 grants of $10,000 will be awarded. And what we're looking for here are projects that challenge, critique, or speak back to the status quo and address issues of injustice in the Caribbean. More details on this are available in the application form, but we are really looking for educational, experimental, and innovative projects. As Ayoka mentioned, it could be something that's a pilot or something that is speaking to a bigger project that is to come. But the idea here is to try to fund projects that will spark interest and conversation about key issues in the Caribbean. Our second theme is Caribbean collaboration. And here we will be awarding 6 grants of $25,000. And we're looking for projects that reflect or drive cooperation across the region in arts and culture. So this could be joint productions, translations, or subtitling, or any other project that brings together artists from more than one island or nation, or preferably more than one linguistic or cultural group. Here, we're going to be a little bit more flexible. The primary applicant has to be from one of the countries listed, but the collaborator or collaborators can be from any other country in the Caribbean or the Caribbean diaspora. I am now going to talk about what we are expecting in the application form. If you've looked at the form already, you'll see that most of it is just the demographic information that we need to be able to process the grants. The information on your project is a brief. We've asked for a brief project overview, and we're looking for about 1 page. We have not set a fixed word count, but I encourage you to try to be as succinct as possible in your description. As Ayoka mentioned, we're basically looking for the who, what, when, where, why of the project. So you need to tell us about what this project is. What are you trying to do with the project, as Ayoka framed it? What is the need that this project addresses? What kind of impact do you think it's going to have? Who will benefit from the project? Who's going to be involved in it? When does it start? When does it end? And if there are any specific phases, then please let us know what each of those phases is about and how long it will last. And the reason that we specifically need information on the phases is that the grant will be dispersed in 2 tranches. So if you have phases that might be affected by when you receive the funds, then please let us know that in your application. We are asking you to try to be as succinct, as I said, as possible. We don't want to make this too difficult for any of the applicants, but what we want to do is to make sure that we understand what this project is about well enough to be able to make comparative decisions between the other projects that have applied. In terms of the budget, what we are asking for is just a simple budget that shows us where the funds will be spent. Some of those line items might include stipends to people who are going to be working on the project, the specific activities that are going to take place under the project, the materials that you might need to purchase for the project, or any travel that might be required. This is not an exhaustive list. Please feel free to add anything else that you think is necessary. We just need to make sure that, as Ayoka mentioned, budget matches what you've said you're going to do in the narrative, that you've thought through all the potential costs in your project, and that there is a part of this project that can be completed with the funds that we are awarding. We recognize that the funds are not, necessarily large amounts, and so the project does not have to be a standalone. It can be part of a larger piece of work that you're working on or planning to work on, but just let us know in as much detail as you can how these funds will be used on this project. I'm going to talk a little bit now about how the jury will be evaluating the proposals that we receive. We are setting up an independent jury made up of artists and arts advocates from across the Caribbean and the diaspora. It's a jury of 5 persons, and they will be reviewing the applications and making the selections. And they're really looking at the applications in 4 key categories. They're looking at artistic and programmatic merit of the project, whether or not the funds, we believe that the funds will be managed well, whether this project is going to reach enough people to make an impact, and particularly reach enough people from groups that are often excluded from arts and culture initiatives, and whether the project will be sustainable. Excuse me a second.
I'm just wondering when we are going to be able to ask questions.
Yes, there is a question and answer session right after I've concluded this presentation. So in terms of artistic and programmatic merit, some of the things the jury will be considering are the quality of the artistic direction, the vision of the project, the quality of the production and design elements that are described. As Ayoka mentioned, how does this project speak to the moment? Does it have contemporary cultural relevance? Is it relevant to the theme? The 2 themes here again are arts for social change and civic engagement and Caribbean collaboration. And is it relevant to the mission of the Caribbean Culture Fund? So I would encourage all of you to please have a look at the CCF website and get a sense of what the CCF is trying to do beyond this call. What we are really excited about in creating this first cohort of grantees is a pool of work that we can showcase around the Caribbean to say, hey, this is the kind of work that we are able to support when people support the fund. And so that will be helpful for us in sort of driving further interest in supporting the fund. In terms of fiscal and managerial competence, we're looking at, does this budget match the narrative? Can you do everything that you've said you want to do with the funds the way you've allocated your budget? Does your budget allow for the artists who are going to be involved in the project to be compensated fairly? If you're applying from an organization, is that organization financially healthy? Is there adequate management and governance in place for the project? And if it's part of a larger work, are there other sources of support to complete the project? Ayoka mentioned that outreach and accessibility is really important to us. So in your project description, please make sure that you spend some time talking about how the project is going to reach a diverse audience. Let us know any involvement you have in the arts and culture community in your local country or globally or across the region. How does the project fit with comparable services within the region? Is there something about this project that's going to expose the audience to a new and compelling cultural experience? And has this project considered including people with special needs or marginalized? And then lastly, we're looking at sustainability. So yes, these are relatively small grants. So what will happen to the project after the funding ends? And has the applicant included any plans for sharing knowledge that comes out of the project or for preserving anything that's produced as part of the work. So fairly simple, one page, but please try to be descriptive. I am now gonna open it up for questions, but as I mentioned, please feel free to look at our website, CaribbeanCultureFund.org, where you will find all the details on the call for proposals and more information about the mission and vision of the CCF.
Sorry, good morning, everyone. Kelly, before you start taking questions, just wanted to let you know that we have also received a number of questions that would be relevant to everyone in the chat. So if you check your chat messages, you can use those to fill time as well.
Okay, great. So let me take the ones from the chat first. Thank you for that, Chris. Yes, so the first question is about space. I think I've addressed that. You are free to use a document. You can copy the application form online into Microsoft Word and reply there if you prefer. You can then upload that through the website or just email your completed application with all your attachments to grants@CaribbeanCultureFund.org. But again, we recommend that you keep your project description to one page. Second question from Glenda Rose Lane. Can someone submit more than one application? Yes, we have not set a limit on how many applications anyone can submit. Diane Robinson has asked if the work is focused on the Caribbean, but you're based outside of the Caribbean, can you work with a fiscal sponsor? The applicant must be an individual or an organization based in one of the 5 countries that I referenced. That has to be the lead applicant. That applicant is then free to choose a collaborator or collaborators in the Caribbean or the diaspora, but the lead applicant for this round of proposals must be based in one of the 5 countries. Question from Francis about storytelling for social change. Yes, absolutely, but that would require in your project description, just explaining to us how the specific project is meant to drive social change.
Hello, can I ask a question?
Sure. Chris, can you just check the chat for me and just see if I've got everybody? But I will first I'll take them in the order that the hands were raised. So we'll go with Rachel
Okay,
and then Marielle.
Please, I don't
But
really
Pierre, if you
speak.
could, Pierre, I'm just gonna take Rachel first as she's had her hand up. So I'll go to Rachel and then Marielle and then back to you, Pierre.
Hi, good morning, and thank you for the information. I have 2 questions. The first one is on the type of project itself. The way the discussion is going appears as if it is either a long-term project or I want to say a physical project that engages people. But I'm working on a manuscript that will have a finite time to finish and then have a finite time to be published. That would be perfectly fine within the fund's interest, and also with co-financing. I was originally paid in this project a nominal amount to start the project, but I don't really consider it financing because I've been doing the project for about 2 years now without financing. So would that be considered co-financing, and would I need to have a letter from the people who paid me, or can I just apply as is because there are no other grants coming in?
Rachel, I think it would depend on how you frame the project. So if there's a piece of the work you're describing that will or has been completed based on the funding that you've already received, if you could explain that, that would be helpful. But if you're carving out a separate piece of the project that is going to be completed with just these funds, then no, that would not be necessary.
Okay. All right, thanks for that. That is helpful.
Okay, and I'll address the timeline in a little bit, but first I'll go next to Marielle.
You're on mute.
Marielle, we need you to unmute.
Thank you. I was just saying, thanks so much for this. Hi, Kelly. And thanks so much to the organizers of this fund. It's really, really exciting. And obviously, given the number of attendees, very, very much needed. I have two questions. I wonder, it isn't, actually three, it isn't apparent to me that you guys have specifically considered film as a standalone project. And I'm just wondering, particularly when it comes to the question of sustainability, obviously once a film is made, it's completed, that is what it's done. You then go into distribution and whatever it is. But I'm curious as to the question of sustainability when it comes to a film project, and how do you see that being relevant?
Yeah, thanks for that, Marielle. So film definitely is included. It's one of the sectors that's specifically listed. With regard to sustainability, I think what would be useful there is to explain in the section that addresses impact and community inclusion, what your plans are, even if it's forward thinking, what is your plan for sharing that community and addressing the points that we raised with this film project? How will it generate the impact that you intend for it to have? Who will see it? What's your plan for reaching new and different audiences, etc.?
Got you. Okay, the second question is the project completion timeline. That hasn't been specifically spoken to. Is there a desirable period of time within which the project needs to have been completed?
Yes, thank you for that. So those details are also in the application package. I'd encourage everyone to have a look, but we need to have final reports on these projects by February 15, 2025. You're welcome to finish the project well in advance of that, but that is the end line for this round of proposals.
Right, so if it is that you are funding the, let's say, the film, if it is that you decide to projectize your project and you're funding you're using this grant to film interviews for a film, would it be adequate that the reports speak to the completion of that process?
To the completion of wherever the boundaries are set in the project narrative, that needs to be completed by February 15, 2025.
Okay.
Completed and reported on by that date.
Okay. And then my final question. Okay, I think that captures everything I wanted to ask for. Was there the previous speaker spoke to the question of the fact that this could be one of multiple sources of funding, but are you looking, is there like a benchmark for what percent of your project needs to have been funded before you make, by the time you make the application, or can it be speculative?
Is it okay to send supporting documents, PDFs, MP4s via Dropbox link? If your files are large, yes, but you please send the link directly to the grants at Caribbean Culture Fund address so that we can have a record of it being sent to us. There is a question about the sustainability. Do we need to speak about social and environmental sustainability of the project? Yes, please feel free to address that in your project narrative. Can the first call include a collaboration with a different country not included in the call? No. So the Caribbean collaboration theme is a separate theme. So those projects are meant to be local to the countries that are listed there. The fiscal management criteria does not apply to individual applicants. And just for everyone's benefit, we will collate these questions and send the answers out to you as well. Yes, the fiscal management criteria applies to organizations, not to individual artists.
All right, Kelly, what I will do is I'm going to manage the questions for you. So we have another question. I'm not sure if we answered it before, but can someone submit more than one application?
Yes, I answered that. And yes, there is
Okay.
no restriction on the number of applications that can be submitted.
Right. We have a possible applicant who is not a traditional arts and culture organization, but they use cultural work geared towards social change. They are an NGO that uses storytelling and the media of video and print to transform culture and create social change. Will they be eligible for the 1.1 fund?
Yes, thank you, Chris. I had addressed that one. So yes, but the question is just making sure that you explain the project fully in the one-page project description.
Okay, great. And I know you had addressed whether or not it's for nonprofit or for-profit organizations. There is a question in the list of values that will disqualify a project. We mention any project that disseminates violent content or violence. Can you offer clarification on this as a company creates comics around Caribbean characters, some of which can be described as superheroes who fight crime and save people? This may include fight scenes which are not graphic. Does this fall under this description?
Yes, thank you for that, Chris. I'm actually going to ask our chair, Michelle Pierre-Louis, to address that one, since she has some specific examples of projects that have addressed violence recently in ways that are aligned with the values of the fund.
Yes, thank you, Kelly. Thank you all for those questions. And before I answer the question about violence, I just want to say that this is the first call for proposals, and we probably will hear from the jury about the modification, possible modification that we'll probably have to make for the next call for proposals. So this is really the experimental call for proposals, and we probably will learn a lot from all the projects that will be submitted, and the jury will instruct us also of possible changes that we might have to take into account in the next call for proposals. So thank you for all your questions that enlighten us also, and now we might have to, as I say, look more closely about the issues in the next call for proposals. About violence, what we meant is that we cannot accept any project that promotes violence, any type of violence. You know, if you're this is not compatible with our values. However, and that's what I was explaining to Kelly when she mentioned that the question was raised. About 4 months ago, maybe 6, at Le Centre d'Art, we had a curator. We called on the curator to have an exhibit, and he decided to gather 16 different artists from all different fields of creation: theater, dance, music, video, visual arts, sculpture, paintings, drawings, what have you. And those 16 artists, architecture, decided, considering what's going on in Haiti today, that it was very important to show how violent is destructive in our society today. And the curator was a bit surprised, but considering that all the 16 artists decided that they feel that their personal life, their communities are so impacted by the violence that's going on, that they had to show to the public what it means and how it affects families, children, women in daily life in Haiti. So that was a huge success, huge success. It was attended by over 5,000 people in spite of the insecurity issues that we're facing in Haiti today. So that exemplifies the type of work that might be taken into consideration in this particular call, as long as it's not, promoting violence as a mean of expressing creativity. Voila. I hope that
Thank you
answers
very
it.
much for that, Michelle. I'm just going to do one last check to see if anyone else has a question that they'd like to ask before we close. Great. As I
Yes.
promised, we will,
Hello.
Annalie, yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I would like to say something. I don't really speak English, but I can say something. But we don't really understand because me, I speak French, and I don't do the translation in French. Me, I have a project. My project, there is many children in Haiti who is living with other family, like they are not living in the house of a mother or father, but maybe a other family cousin. When there's children is in other country. Mais there's children of there's
Can I
there's
translate
children.
for him? Can I translate for him? He's trying to say that his project is about children in Haiti that lives with other families and that are abused children. Can you continue?
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah. Ok, ces enfants-là,
Mhm.
ils souffrent beaucoup quand ils vivent dans d'autres maisons. Par exemple, on les appelle souvent reste avec. Ok?
Okay,
Et,
Mais,
continue.
ok.
excusez-moi, monsieur, excusez-moi,
Mhm,
laissez-moi vous dire.
mhm,
Il s'agit de créer
mhm,
un produit artistique.
mhm,
Donc, et si vous suivez très bien ce qui a été dit et ce qui est sur le site, vous allez
mhm,
comprendre quelles sont les exigences de cet appel à projet, que ce
mhm,
soit que vous voulez, que ce soit que ça concerne des enfants, que ça concerne des adultes, que ça concerne des restes avec. Le
mhm,
problème est quel est le projet artistique que vous voulez créer, quels que soient
mhm.
les gens qui sont concernés par ce projet-là. Et c'est ça qui va compter. Donc, ne nous donnez pas un projet pour prendre en charge des enfants qui sont déplacés, qui sont
Non,
malheureux.
non, 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 c'est pas ça. C'est
Quel
pas
est
ça.
le projet artistique que vous
Mhm,
voulez proposer, même si
mhm.
cela concerne des enfants, et ceci sera pris en compte par le jury. Ça ne veut pas dire que le jury acceptera ou n'acceptera pas. Nous ne sommes pas membres du jury, nous. C'est un jury qui est entièrement indépendant du CCF et ce sont des gens qualifiés qui peuvent justifier des choix qui seront faits. Donc, travaillez sur votre projet dans le sens proposé par le CCF et le jury prendra compte de la proposition qui sera faite.
Ok, merci.
Je vous en prie.
Ouais.
I'm sorry, but I had to explain it in French, but I guess the translator made it audible to all.
Thank you for that, Michelle. Yeah, there seems to be some trouble with the French translation channel. We can take Annalie and then Delvin.
Thank you so much, and congratulations on responding to the need in the Caribbean. This is so refreshing. I just wanted to clarify the 1.1 call, if there's an aspect of your proposal that requires production in in a country that's not listed. So the bulk of the creative work is happening in your country, but you wanted to outsource like a recording studio or a press in another Caribbean country. Can you outsource an aspect of it, or the full production needs to happen in your country, one of the 4 or 5 countries listed?
Yeah, we haven't set a specific criteria, but yes, I think outsourcing parts of the production would be fine if the majority of the work will be completed in the host country, in the territory listed.
Right. Okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Delvin?
Hi, good morning. First of all, thank you very much for the opportunity with this grant. I just have a couple questions. In the co-financing section, I just wanted to know if you have our organization or our partners that would be absorbing or providing a statement that they will be absorbing charges for services in kind for some parts of the project to cover some of the expenses outside of what the fund will provide by the grant. Is that okay as proof of co-financing, or do you need something else besides that?
Yes, that would be fine, Delvin. I think the important, as Ayuka mentioned, one of the things that we'll be checking for is does your narrative match your budget? So if there's things that are going to take place under the project that you don't have included in your budget, it would be important to clarify how those things will be handled. So if you have a third-party entity that's providing in-kind services, it would be good to include that.
Okay, thank you very much. And also, just one more thing regarding the violent answer, which I think is very thorough. I just have one aspect of it. So like some of our characters, Caribbean fighting styles, for example, that are not represented in media at all. And part of our mission statement is presenting these things along with other characters and narratives in our stories. Would that fall under the promotion of violence stipulation? Because it's not necessarily going to be graphic, but we do want to showcase these particular fighting styles in some aspects in some of our stories. So I just want to know if that would just be exempted from that, or if that we have to pursue something else.
From your description, it doesn't sound like it would be promoting violence, but I would just encourage you to try to explain that clearly in your project description.
Okay,
Yeah,
thanks very much.
The better you explain, the better the jury will be able to make
Right.
a sound decision.
Okay, thanks very much. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think Elodie, Jose, and then Casey.
Oui, bonjour à tous. Merci beaucoup hein, pour le lancement de ce fonds qui est très intéressant. Alors, ma question concernait la collaboration pour l'axe 2 de l'appel à projet. Je voulais savoir quelles étaient vos attentes pour justifier la collaboration. J'ai lu qu'une lettre d'intention, une lettre d'intérêt du collaborateur voisin suffisait. Est-ce la seule chose que vous demandez? Merci.
Je peux répondre, Kelly? I can answer.
Merci.
Sorry, is there...
C'est vrai que nous avons limité, c'est-à-dire nous avons énoncé que la lettre de collaboration permettrait d'établir la justification de cette collaboration. Mais tout ce qui peut aider pour que les jurys puissent avoir une idée éclairée du projet, tout ce qui peut aider dans ce sens sera le bienvenu. Et ça peut faire partie des documents soumis en dehors même du formulaire. Donc, tout appui qui éclaire sur la collaboration possible est bienvenu et je pense que ça peut vraiment aider le jury à mieux comprendre le projet, les types de collaboration et éventuellement les attentes en termes de résultats.
Très bien,
Michelle,
c'est
if you
clair. Merci.
wouldn't mind just
Merci,
repeating that
Michel.
in English.
Pardon me?
No, I was asking if you could just repeat that in English so that the others will understand.
Yeah, the question was about the second axis of the call for proposal, and it was said that the question was, is the letter of the third party or the second party or the party involved, if the letter of collaboration is all that we're asking for? And my answer was that it is important to have that letter of collaboration that stresses the collaboration, that explains the collaboration, but any other document that you can send in annex to the project that can substantiate the type of collaboration and the type of collaborators will help the jury to make a sound decision.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you so much.
Casey?
Good morning, everyone. I hope you're all hearing me clearly.
Yes, Casey, go ahead.
Okay, great. So I'm sorry, I clearly mixed up the time, so I just joined. So my apologies if some of my questions have already been addressed. So I have I guess 3 questions. I am still in the process of registering a nonprofit organization. I'm not sure if it's going to be fully registered. I've started the process already. I'm just not sure if it's going to be fully registered by April 28th. So, which I think is the deadline for this project for call. So would I still have to only register as an individual, or could I still put my organization's name in anticipation of its registration?
I'd recommend applying as an individual, as you may not be processed by the time the grant is ready to be awarded. So I think it would be safer to apply as an individual for this call.
Okay, and if I'm applying as an individual, then when it talks about tax standing or tax status, would I have to get a letter from my government to say that I'm in good standing in terms of my taxes?
I think what we require at this point is just the tax ID from the country of residence, but I will clarify that and email everyone a more detailed response.
Okay, another question I have is the overall concept of my project, right, is the creation of, is like training persons in performing literary arts, like poetry and storytelling, so that there can be persons in these various rural communities can put on their own literary festivals. That's the gist of what I want to do. Would I have to do it or do that in more than one Caribbean country in order to be eligible for this call?
So the Caribbean collaboration call requires explicit partnership between entities in more than one territory. So if you're applying for that call, you would really have to make clear how that collaboration is going to work and who the partners are that would be involved in that collaboration. If you're applying under Arts for Social Change and Civic Engagement, then you would need to address how that project speaks to sparking social change or civic engagement.
Okay, so I can apply, it can be, if I want to go for the first call, right, it'd have to be in at least 2 countries, or does it have to be more than 2?
For the second call, for the Caribbean collaboration call.
Caribbean collaboration
The
call,
second theme, sorry.
Second theme, okay, so that's only 2 countries are required for that.
Yes.
All right, but arts and civic, I'm looking at the website right now, sorry. I'm seeing the arts and, I just want to make sure I'm not confusing it. The arts and civic one, it could be just in one country, but I just need
It's
to
just in one country, correct.
Okay, great. And then what is the amount of, what's the funding for the arts or social
So
change?
all the details are on the website and in the application package. I would encourage you to have a look. There are 10 grants of 10,000 for Arts for Social Change and Civic Engagement and 6 grants of 25,000 for Caribbean collaboration.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I wasn't confused. And then my last one is if I'm collaborating with other organizations in another country, what do I need to get up at this stage? Would I need to have a power of attorney from that other country to indicate that?
No, you just need a letter indicating the nature of the collaboration from that collaborating partner.
That's it. Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Right, so I think we are trying to wrap up by 11:15. So I'm just going to take 3 more questions, but if you don't get a chance to ask a question, please put it in the chat and we will reply to all the questions in writing and send those out to you. So apologies if I've missed anyone, but we're going to take Maddie, Rhonda, and Armac, and then we will close.
Good day, thank you. Well, apparently it appears that the funds are lower sums than expected and can only contribute to large budget projects. I'm very curious, in consideration of its new establishment, are these funds projected to increase over time?
Well, that's our intention. Thank you for the question. So as Michelle mentioned, this is our pilot round of projects. When we have a chance to look at all of the applications and the projects that are going to be funded, we can make decisions about what the next round will look like. And we certainly have plans to fundraise rather aggressively over the next couple of years to try to increase the pool of funds that's available.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
if I may add something, Kelly, that was
Michelle.
a decision made by the steering committee, and the steering committee there are members who have a lot of experience in Caribbean culture and Caribbean funding. And we all agreed that for the first call, which is a test, we will propose these two axes with these figures in terms of funding. And we'll see for the next call if we can increase. And at the same time, we are constantly fundraising for the Culture Fund. So the more we get a really credible, sound institution, well-managed, that funders can trust, the more we'll be able to probably raise fund and make sure that we can raise the allocation to all the call for proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. I also wanted to ask, what are the chances of one proposal receiving multiple funds for a particular project?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
What are the chances of one proposal or one entity receiving multiple funds or multiple sums?
Under this call? You mean, would we fund the same project more than once through this call?
Yeah.
No,
Well,
that will not
yeah.
happen. One of the things that we are instructing the jury to do is to try to come up with a balanced cohort. So making sure that the grants that are selected in this round reflect diversity in terms of the countries of origin, in terms of the types of projects that are funding, a balance between new and emerging artists. So we intend for this cohort of grantees to reflect the diverse interests of the fund. And so that it would not serve those interests to fund the same project multiple times.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
However, based on your question, if I understand something, so you can have in a project, you can have co-funding. In other words, if you submitting as an individual and $10,000 is not enough to get your project done, you can have a co-funder, but we have to understand who the co-funder is and do we share the same values, because that's very important to us. So let's say you would have a project of 20,000. The CCF would put 10,000 and you have a co-funder for 10,000, but you have to specify where those funds come from.
I see. Thank you.
Thank you, Maddie. Rhonda?
Hi, morning. So I'm thinking of submitting two different projects, one as an individual and one through a production company. The production company is a limited company, so it's for profit. I am not sure I understood whether those would be eligible for this grant, and if so, what is the classification? Would it fall under association, foundation, institution, social enterprise, if it's not explicitly set up as a social enterprise? Yeah, that was
Michelle, would you like to take that?
When we set up the rules, we thought about social enterprise. Okay? We didn't want to exclude for-profit, but we wanted them to fall in the category of the values that we share and the title of the call for proposal. Okay? Civic engagement, social change, justice. These are values that are very important to us since they were at the core of all the investigation and meetings and conversation that we had in the process of setting up the CCF. So what I would say is that we don't want to exclude this possibility. It will depend a lot on the project itself, what it covers. Does it respond to the values shared and the title of the call for proposal? And we'll see what the jury would say to such projects. And then we'll make a decision afterwards to know if we include or to what extent do we accept enterprises and for-profit institutions. Because the line sometimes is very, very tenuous. So it will depend on the project, it will depend on the revenues expected, and it will depend on the scope of the project. So that's what I don't know what you think, Ali, but so far that's what I would answer to the question. And it will very, very much depend on the way it's presented so that the jury can make a sound decision also.
Yes, agreed, Michelle. That's what I would have said. We hadn't excluded for-profit applicants, but the key question is, how does this project align with one of the two themes?
Exactly.
And with all of the values and potential impact that Ayoka would have discussed.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. So therefore, a for-profit company should apply as a social enterprise, but showing proof of social engagement and social impact.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
So last two questions will go to Armak and then Jose.
Hi, thank you very much. I really appreciate this opportunity. So my question is, I know you mentioned that we could actually apply for more than one projects, but is it possible that it could be awarded based on the scope, two totally separate different projects? For example, one is based in architecture and the other one is more like artisanal, like woodwork. So that's one. And secondly, what if you're trying to, you have a Caribbean diaspora, let's say in New York, but they're made up of like a Haitian community or Trinidadian community, does that count?
I'll take the second one first. So the Caribbean diaspora is explicitly part of the mandate of the CCF, and future calls will be open to artists and organizations based in the diaspora. In this call, the Caribbean collaboration call, the collaborating partner, the second or third partner in the project can be based in the diaspora. To answer the first question, the decisions will be based on the relative merits of the project and how thoroughly and convincingly the project is described in your application. However, I think it's unlikely that more than one grant would be given to the same organization.
Understood. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And Jose, you get the final word.
Oh, thank you. It's just a quick question. I am part of a group that we have been collaborating across the Caribbean, in Puerto Rico, Cuba, and here in the Dominican Republic, New Orleans. But my question is, we generally have a meeting kind of residency between artists, but because of the travel arrangements, we generally do those in Cuba because it's easier for us to go to Cuba from the Dominican Republic instead of they coming here. Is this still eligible if we are artists from the Dominican Republic that are going to participate in a Caribbean meeting that doesn't happen in one of the countries that you are including in this call of proposals?
Again, it would depend on how the project is described, but travel is included as an eligible line item. So it depends on how that project fits with either Arts for Social Change and Civic Engagement or Caribbean collaboration. But in and of itself, travel is fine as a line item. But the question is, how does this project fit with one of the themes?
Thank
Now,
you.
I can say something also with regard to Cuba. Cuba is included. Cuba is a very important cultural scene, and there is no way Cuba will be left out of the Caribbean Culture Fund. But in some cases, we may have some donors that, based on their own regulation, have something to say about funding Cuba. I don't know if it's the case so far. I don't think so, but we have to be careful about that also. But I know we will be receiving funds that are not restricted, that are unrestricted, and this I just wanted to add that to what Kelly says about the fact that traveling is part of the expenses that can be shown in your project.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, everyone, for joining and for asking such thoughtful questions. As I mentioned, we are going to circulate this recording as well as the responses to the questions. So I'm now going to turn it over to Alan B. Augustine, who is a member of our steering committee, just to close us out.
Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, everyone, for participating in the first information session on the Caribbean Culture Fund. I really hope that the information we have just shared with you can help you to fully understand the objectives set through this call for projects and therefore fulfill the project form correctly. We are waiting for your proposal, and we have no doubt that they will live up to our expectation and will be able to create, as we indicated in our documents, which is between people of the Caribbean and show the Caribbean cultural diversity. I really hope that this fund will help create a new dynamic in the Caribbean region on a cultural level. On behalf of the CCF steering committee, I want to especially thank our partner, mainly Open Society Foundation. Thank As Michelle Pierre said in her opening remarks, the steering committee and Kelly are available to answer questions from you at any time. Thank you for your interest. Good luck, everyone.
Thank you very much, Alan B. Thank you to Michelle and Ayoka for leading us this morning, and to Chris for her support with answering the questions. Thank you also to our interpreters. I know we had some challenges, but thank you for being available, and thank you all for participating. Best of luck with the applications. Have a great day.